You're watching PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
And welcome to PIX on Politics Daily. I'm Henry Rossoff. Thank you once again for joining us. We've been chatting throughout the last couple of weeks with the candidates for the hotly contested New York 7th Congressional District primary, and that's to replace longtime Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, who's retiring after decades in public service. And today we continue with that series by bringing in Assemblymember Claire Valdez, who is running for New York 7. Assemblymember, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Why do you want to be in Congress?
Goodness. So before I was in the Assembly, I was a member of UAW Local 2110, and that was really my introduction to politics. Before I was a union member, like so many New Yorkers and so many people who live in New York 7, I worked customer service jobs, low-wage jobs, lots of unpaid overtime. We know the story. My union introduced me to the idea that when we organize together, we can win better wages and working conditions and benefits, and not just for ourselves, but for our coworkers, for our families. And when you realize that, when you recognize that, you get to take that power outside of your workplace and into your neighborhoods. So that was my introduction to politics. I ran for Assembly in 2024, was elected. And now I want to take that exact same fight for worker power to Washington.
And you have been endorsed by Mayor Zohran Mamdani. I feel like that is the first sort of wider introduction many New Yorkers had to you. Talk about your history with the current mayor. I understand you're the first elected official to endorse him, yes?
Very proud to endorse him alongside some of my other state colleagues as well. So I met the mayor, now the mayor, when I was running for Assembly. When I was first thinking about running for Assembly, he spoke to me about the power that our offices can hold, what kind of organizing we can do in the districts. And it was really inspiring, and I think was kind of the final push I needed to actually make the decision to run for Assembly. We obviously worked together on that campaign, and then for a little bit in Albany before his mayoral campaign really took off.
And I understand the early organizing you've had through Democratic Socialists of America, through some of the mayor's success, but also your own union organizing success. You've had quite the kickoff so far. Tell me about some of the facts, figures, and door-knocking numbers, if you will.
Absolutely. So I really got my start in politics by knocking on doors for Bernie Sanders and Tiffany Caban and many other progressive and socialist politicians. And so the Fields piece of this is really near and dear to my heart, and it's often exactly how we win these races. So this campaign is very much a continuation of the campaign that elected Zohran Mamdani to the mayor's office. And that energy continues in this campaign. We had a big field launch a couple weekends ago. We had 120 people out in the bitter cold. We knocked on 6,000 doors and talked to almost 400 of our neighbors. It's a really exciting start to the campaign, and there are now weekly field events happening every single week, almost every single day and night, and that'll continue through the June primary.
Before we talk about some of the other people running, your thoughts on them, let's just lead forward with the issues.
Yeah.
What do you see as the top one or two issues in New York 7, which is predominantly a Queens-based district, but a little bit of Brooklyn, yeah?
It's a bit of both. It's actually predominantly Brooklyn and a little bit of Queens,
okay.
But it's mostly
the redistricting got me again. You guys need to stop changing the map. You're killing me here.
I'm saying.
I'm sorry. So Queens and Brooklyn, go ahead.
No, but no matter which side of Newtown Creek you're on, rent is one of the biggest issues. It's a 77% tenant district, and the rent is too high. We have a lot of people who are being displaced by development, by corporate landlords who are pushing people out and raising rents. So it's a huge issue that's facing the district. Obviously, under the Trump administration, ICE is a real threat. Has had a real chilling effect throughout every single neighborhood in the district. It's a very immigrant and working class district, and suppressing our neighbors and really trying to tear our families and communities apart is a real issue. We are seeing a moment under this administration where our democracy is very much under threat, whether you're an immigrant or a trans person, whether you are a political dissident. And that we have to be defending our democracy, and we have to be fighting back against this administration. We also have to recognize that this didn't start under the Trump administration. This has been a 40, 50-year-long attack on working people, attack on unions and organized labor that's forced people into low-wage jobs, into powerlessness, and we have to confront the corporate greed that's brought us to this moment as well.
Should ICE be abolished, and are, in the meantime, changes to ICE worth shutting down the government over?
I mean, ICE should absolutely be abolished. That's full stop. There's no way to reform an agency that has been militarized by billions and millions of dollars and is now murdering American citizens in broad daylight, on the streets, on camera. In the meantime, I applaud the efforts in Washington to make as many changes as possible, but ultimately we have to abolish ICE.
Let's talk about some of the others running. When I spoke with Councilmember Julie Wan just a couple of days ago about this race, she said the number one issue was ICE and immigrants, and it's a heavy immigrant district. You've mentioned this, but she said, you should elect me because I would be an immigrant representative. So, I mean, this is about choices. Why are you a better choice than the council member?
I talked a little bit a moment ago about defending our democracy. Our democracy isn't a given. We have to fight for it every single day. And in my opinion, the labor movement and unions are really on the front lines of defending that, of making workers feel powerful, giving them the ability to, bargain for the things that they deserve. And the labor movement's been under attack for generations at this point. We need a federal government that actually stands with workers in contract fights, that fights for legislation that makes it easier for us to organize our workplaces. And as somebody who comes out of the labor movement, whose life was transformed by her union, I think I'm equipped to bring that fight to Washington.
Your other primary opponent in this primary, just some wordplay I didn't mean to do there, but it would be the Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso, endorsed by outgoing Congresswoman Velasquez. Why do you think you're better suited than him?
Again, I'll point to my experience in the labor movement, but I'll also say one of the great moral questions of our time is the question of the genocide in Gaza. And I have a very consistent track record on speaking out against it, on naming it as a genocide, and calling for the end of the United States' complicity in funding it. I've been marching and mobilizing, phone banking. I was arrested last year in Kirsten Gillibrand's office. We need people who are ready to fight against these grave injustices and fight for a United States foreign policy that reflects peace and life and resources here at home and not death abroad.
As New Yorkers are getting to know you, and we only have a couple of minutes left here, what do they need to know about you as a person, both in how you'll lead and just, your experience here in New York and in the state legislature and so on?
Absolutely. I'm a fighter, that I believe very much that working people have the political power to do incredible things together, that organizing really is the basis of justice and equity in New York City and in New York State. And then when we come together, we can do really incredible things. I saw that in my union. I've seen that organizing alongside Zohran Mamdani in the legislature. And that we face a moment of real profound inequality, that we have to be fighting to tax the rich, to bring resources back to our communities. And that's really the fight ahead, not just in Albany, but even at the federal level.
I understand the tax the rich piece is something you're heavily involved in right now, especially as we move into the New York budget cycle. There's some action coming up on that you mentioned to me before we got going, right?
On the 25th, we're encouraging folks to come up to Albany to make their voices heard, to make sure that we are continuing the energy that came out of Zohran Mamdani's campaign, and demanding again that we tax the rich, that the wealthiest among us pay their fair share under the Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, so-called. In New York alone, billionaires, millionaires are getting a $12 billion tax break. And I think we can get a little bit of that back.
I want to ask one final question. It just occurred to me because I feel like we're hearing DSA more and more, Democratic Socialists of America, but I feel like people define it differently. What does it mean to be a Democratic Socialist? What does it mean to you specifically?
Absolutely. So for me, democratic socialism is about democracy. It's about building democracy beyond the voting booth, in our workplaces, in our apartment buildings, in our neighborhoods. That for me was very much about my union and about being able to organize alongside my coworkers for better wages, better working conditions, better benefits, and a real seat at the table. I was on my negotiating committee against Columbia University, and going toe to toe with a $14 billion endowment university as just one person feels impossible. But when you recognize that you're actually with 500 of your coworkers, you are so much more powerful. And that for me is what democratic socialism is about. It's about people coming together to fight for the things that we deserve against corporate greed and a billionaire class.
Assembly member, we'll see you out on the campaign trail. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
And that'll do it for this edition of PIX on Politics Daily. Of course, we have the big show PIX on Politics with Dan Mannarino that airs every Friday at 6:30 with a re-air on Sunday morning. So go ahead and check that out. For now, I'm Henry Rossoff, wishing you a great day.